It belongs to you. My hallelujah belongs to you. My hallelujah, my hallelujah belongs to you. It belongs to you, Jesus. My hallelujah. Oh. It belongs to you, yeah. Jesus. You deserve my worship. Yeah, you deserve my praise. Oh, we say hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Lord, you're worthy. Yes, you're worthy. Lord, you're worthy. Yes, you're worthy. All the glory, all the honor, all the praise. Oh, yes, you do. My hallelujah belongs to you. Oh, yes, you do. We sing my hallelujah. It belongs. My thank you, Jesus, belongs to you. It belongs to you. All the glory and honor belongs to you. I lift my voice, I lift my hands and worship to you, Jesus. Belongs to you.
Good morning, NAACP, delegates, alternates, and attendees to the 109th Annual National Convention of the NAACP. Please take your seats. Delegates, please take your seats. At this time, we will formally introduce members of the NAACP National Board of Directors. Hailing from Clearwater, Florida, our chairman, Leon W. Russell. Hailing from Brooklyn, New York, our vice chairman, Karen Boykin Towns. Aubrey C. Hooper, assistant secretary. Jesse H. Turner, treasurer. Yvonne White, assistant treasurer. Akoshawa Ali. Dr. Wendell Anthony. Wandra Ashley Williams. Ophelia Averett. The Honorable Fred Banks, Jr. Dr. William Barber II. Gary Bledsoe. Barbara Bowling Williams. Alfonso Braggs. Chairman Emeritus Rosalind McAllister Brock. Dr. Amos C. Brown. Deborah F. Brown. Carolyn Q. Coleman. James Crowell III. Raul Cunningham. Michael Curry. Reverend Teresa Deere. Dedrick Doolin. Edward DeBose. Dr. Hazel N. Dukes. Catherine Eglund. Tevin Ellis. Scott X. Estelle. James Gallman. Dr. David Goatley. Jacqueline Grant. George Gresham. Ron Hassan. Mirandon Henry. Alice Huffman. Leonard James III. Howard Jefferson. Dr. Ernest Johnson. Thomas L. Kalahar. Alon B. Lazowski. William Lucy. Bob Lydia. DeJory Mackenzie Simmons. Brendan Mitchell. Gwen Moore. R. Helen Myers. Adora Obi Inweze. Dominique Penny. Reverend Dr. James C. Perkins. Rabbi Jonah Pessner. Bishop Dennis Proctor. Stephen Ricard. Peter Rose. Anita L. Russell. James Settles, Jr. Bernard Similton. Bernard Similton. Reverend Dr. Gina Stewart. Gloria Sweetlove. Bishop Marvin F. Thomas, Sr. Michael Turner. Rayvon Waters. Robin Williams. Lily B. Wilson. Richard Womack. The Honorable Julian Bond, Chairman Emeritus. The Honorable Rosalind Brock, Chairman Emeritus. Merle Evers Williams, Chairman Emeritus. Daisy Bates, Director Emeritus. Dr. Eugene T. Reed, Director Emeritus. Benjamin Lawson Hooks, Executive Director and CEO Emeritus. Members of the NAACP Foundation. The Chairman of the NAACP Foundation, Dr. Dwayne Proctor. The Vice Chairman, Georgette Dixon. Bradford Berry Esquire, General Counsel and Secretary, NAACP Foundation. Thomas Callahar, Treasurer. Pamela Alexander. Dr. John E. Arredondo. Maya Benjamin, Birmingham. Elena Beverly. Lori Billingsley. The Honorable Laura Blackburn. Larcene Bland. Zafar Brooks. Shaka Burgess. Angela Dorn. Eugene Duffy. Ingrid Ellerby. Miguel Foster. Ed Foster Simon. Patrick Gaston. Gerald Hudson. Shazia Khan. Tanya Leah Lombard. Dana Meddinghall. Nate Miles. Reverend Keith Norman. Eric Patterson. Dr. Lonnie Randolph. Barbara Sapp Davis. Julia Felice Sessoms. Esther Silver Parker. Stephanie Silverman. Hilton Smith. John Spanato. Solois Steele. Michael Twyman. Roy Williams. Kathleen Wilson Thompson. Sharik Yusafi. Carol Young. President's Circle. Henry Hank Aaron. Earl Graves Sr. Merle Evers Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a rousing round of applause for the members of our National Board of Directors and NAACP Foundation trustees. At this time, members of the Board of Directors and Foundation, please stand to be recognized. Delegates, alternates, and attendees to the 109th annual convening of the nation's oldest, largest, and most widely recognized civil rights organization, the NAACP. please join me in welcoming from San Antonio, Texas, the president of the Texas State Conference NAACP and member of the National Board of Directors, Gary Bledsoe, our presiding officer for this morning's session.
Good morning, NAACP. This meeting is called to order. Good morning, delegates. My name is Gary Bledsoe, and I am a member of the NAACP's National Board of Directors and president of the Texas NAACP State Conference, and the presiding officer this session. Joining me this morning is Bob Lydia, our first vice president in Texas, member of the National Board of Directors, who will serve as our parliamentarian for this session. And would you please welcome Dr. Otis J. Mitchell, senior pastor of Mount Zion First Baptist Church in San Antonio, Texas, who will give us our invocation.
Please join me in prayer. Eternal God, our Father, our Creator, our Sustainer, yes, and even our Redeemer. Thank you so much for the privilege of allowing this 109th session to come together yet again. It would not be right if we did not ask your blessings and your direction over every word that is spoken, everything that is done, so that when it is done, you will say, well done. Thank you, O God, for all the delegates, for the officers and the leaders of this dynamic organization for truth, justice, equality, righteousness. Thank you, God. Now be with us throughout the duration of not only the rest of this day, but the entire session. This we ask in the name of the one and most true high God, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Pastor, thank you so much. The charge and responsibility that we have, that is a much needed prayer. Those delegates who are submitting petitions as candidates for the at-large seat for the Board of Directors must bring your petition to the Election Supervisory Committee at the front of the dais. As you see, the members are here. 10 minutes. And Ms. Sweetlove, who is the official timekeeper for this, has indicated you have 10 minutes, and when she says 10 minutes, she means 10 minutes. And so with all of the members who are here, we have those that are here that are on that committee, and you can see them here. Would you please raise your hands? And any other members in the audience, if you would stand and raise your hands. This morning, delegates, there are several distinguished individuals who will bring greetings. It is my privilege to present the Honorable Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, Congressman for the 16th Congressional District of El Paso, Texas, someone who gets it and who reflects and embodies the concerns and issues of the NAACP. You know, he is a congressman from El Paso. And one of the things that is significant, we have seen the situation that is so mindful of slavery, where parents are being divorced or separated from their children. And that is occurring outside of the community that he represents. And one thing that's significant that I do want to note is I heard an expert talking about this the other day, and he was having a debate on NPR. And on NPR, they said that My people, one of the individuals responding to him said, my people came here legally. And he responded and said, well, who checked their papers? Was it Pocahontas or Geronimo? And I think that really kind of lays the issue out very clearly. Let's please welcome a great NAACP friend, Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
Good morning. So nice to be with you. An honor of a lifetime to be able to address you. Very grateful to Texas President Gary Bledsoe for the invitation to be here, National President Johnson, Chairman Russell, Mayor Ron Nirenberg of San Antonio, who is hosting all of us here today. It is an absolute pleasure. It is an honor. And I bring you greetings from my community, my hometown of El Paso, Texas, just 500 miles down the road west on I-10, or as we like to say in Texas, next door to where we are right now, where my wife Amy and I are raising our 3 children, Ulysses, who's 11, Molly, who's 10, their little brother Henry, who is 7 years old, in a city that we are fiercely proud of, a city that for me defines service with Fort Bliss and the members who are serving our country right now in Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq, in Somalia and Yemen, in Niger, half a world away, putting their lives on the line for this country, as generations of El Pasoans and Texans and Americans have done before them. It's a city of immigrants. It's the largest binational community in this hemisphere. It's the place where millions of Americans have first set foot on U.S. soil, and I would like to think it's the place that we're going to lead the way to make sure that this country does not take children from their parents when they come to the front door of the United States and put them in cages or in tent cities, keep them separated from those parents who risked everything, including their lives, to bring them to a better place, who chose us. And El Paso is also a pioneer when it comes to civil rights. In 1914, Dr. Lawrence Nixon, originally from Marshall, Texas, who was practicing medicine in Cameron, Texas, although the people in Cameron did not take kindly to an African-American doctor, no matter how well trained, no matter his expertise or experience. And so he left Cameron and came to El Paso, Texas in that year of 1914, where he also founded the first chapter of the NAACP in the state of Texas, and that was in El Paso. And when, in 1923, the state of Texas decided that African Americans would no longer be able or allowed to vote in the Democratic primary election, which at that time was dispositive because there was no Republican Party in the state of Texas to speak of, Dr. Nixon, with the help of the NAACP, took his poll tax receipt in 1924 to the ballot box and attempted to vote, and was denied the right to exercise his right as a U.S. citizen, a right that countless had fought and died for. And with the help of the NAACP, Dr. Nixon brought suit, a suit that went all the way to the Supreme Court, not once, but twice. And though the struggle was long and one of the hardest ever fought for voting rights, in 1944, almost 20 years to the day of that first attempt to vote, Dr. Nixon was able to cast his ballot with his wife in El Paso, Texas, helping to integrate our elections and do a better job of securing the civil rights of each and every one of us, perhaps inspired by his example. Only 10 years later, one of these fierce African-American women leaders who will literally define the future of this country, Thelma White, a graduate of the all-African-American Douglas High School, had the audacity to try to enroll at Texas Western College in El Paso, Texas. And because of the segregation clause in our state constitution, she was denied admittance. Enlisting the help of the NAACP in Texas and a little-known attorney named Thurgood Marshall, she also took her case to the courts. And in those federal courts, not only integrated higher education in the state of Texas, but struck down the segregation clause in the state constitution. That is the leadership that we have seen in El Paso from the NAACP. And I ask myself right now, Who am I and who are we to be the inheritors of that work that came before us, before this moment and before this time? Those service members who laid their lives down for this country. Those freedom riders who took their lives into their own hands, taking Greyhound buses across the former Confederacy. Not lost on me that we just celebrated the 57th anniversary of John Lewis being released from the Mississippi State Penitentiary, Parchman, for being bold enough to use what was then known as an all-white bathroom in that state. For those who lost their lives or risked their lives, I want to make sure that we are a match for this moment, for the urgency that it requires, for the test that will prove once and for all who we are in a state that is 49th in voter turnout. Not by accident, 100% by design. 4 times the courts last year found that Texas has drawn some people out of their congressional districts solely based on their race, the color of their skin, their ethnicity, or their country of national origin. Some votes not intended to be cast, some voices not intended to be heard. We need our next Supreme Court justice to respect the civil rights and the voting rights of every single person in every single state for the sacrifices that came before. And we need a U.S. Senator who will ensure that we only confirm that justice, who represents everyone in the decisions that they make in that highest, most important court in this state that ranks last in the country in access to medical care, the least insured in the United States of America, where we are the epicenter of the maternal and infant mortality crisis, twice as deadly for African American women and families. We should be the ones leading the way to make sure that every woman, man, and child is able to see a doctor or a provider or afford that medication as a basic human right. And Texas should be the one to lead the way so that you're well enough to work that job, to finish your education, to run for office, to create art, to carry your fair share of the burden so it's a little bit lighter on everyone else. And that education that I'm talking about, I want to make sure that it is there for each and every single one of our children, that there is equity not just in funding, but that we ensure that the teachers at the front of the classroom look like the students that they are teaching, that we stop seeing discipline rates that are 3 to 4 to 5 times as harsh on African American students as they are in white students in that same classroom in front of that same teacher. Because in this state, we have a school to prison pipeline that begins as early as that kindergarten classroom with those 5-year-old kids who are defenseless against this institutionalized racism. And we can do a better job on making sure each one of those kids has an equal shot at success in this life. When we look at the statistics and find out that 25%, a full quarter of African American children have had a parent in the criminal justice system, that compares to 4% for white children. And that is a rate that is 4 times as high as it was in 1980. Not only do we have our work cut out for us, we have to acknowledge that we're going in the wrong direction. We have to acknowledge that we have a war on drugs in this country that has become a war on people in this country, that has become a war on some people in this country, the largest prison population on the face of the planet, disproportionately brown and black. We need to end that war on drugs, get people out from behind bars, raising families, working those jobs, being their best in this life. And I know that Texas can lead the way. I want to be that senator that represents every single one of us in this great state, all 28 million. I want to be that senator for the United States of America, and I want to be that senator for you. Thank you for having me here today. It is an honor to be able to join you, and I am grateful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You can see why we have such warm feelings for Congressman O'Rourke. He indeed does embody the matters and concerns of urgence of the NAACP. Now I have another great opportunity to introduce to someone you that we all know, but someone who I've always admired. I've always called her, and so it's great to be here in Texas and say this, kind of the LBJ of the NAACP. and someone who I think is truly a lioness of the NAACP. Please welcome a member of our National Board of Directors and chairman of our Election Supervisory Committee, and the incomparable Hazel Dukes from the great state of New York.
Thank you, presiding officer. As you can see, the people that was lined up has left exactly 10 o'clock. Thank you all for obeying the rules, and for those who decided to run, best of luck. We will be back in about 15 minutes after the national staff go through the petitions that were given in on time, and we will let you know the election process that will be held today. So sit tight. We'll be back around 15 minutes to let you know if we have an election. Thank you.
I want everyone to know that Reverend Jimerson was here and is here, and he's going to do the benediction for us now. Now I have another great opportunity to introduce someone to you that I think has been a real ally of the NAACP. You know, there are issues, for example, of police misconduct that we deal with around the country, not just in Texas, but everywhere. And there have been big issues here in San Antonio with the civil service law and laws that seem to encourage police officers to engage in misconduct. And so that's been a real problem. And he's been opposed to the meet and confer agreements and things of that nature. Has been outspoken. So he's really been there on the front line on issues of importance, even though he's the mayor of the city and knows that maybe sometimes issues like that don't play well. So I think that says something about the kind of person who he is. Let's please encourage, give warm NAACP welcome to Ron Nirenberg, Mayor, the City of San Antonio. Please welcome him to the podium.
Good morning. Welcome to San Antonio. It is a pleasure to be with you for the opening session of this 109th NAACP Annual Convention. Congratulations. I hope you enjoyed the city over the weekend. Anybody venture out? It's a beautiful place, beautiful people. We are delighted to have you here. This is the first time your convention has been in our city, and we hope you come back soon and often. As you may have heard, 2018 is a special year for San Antonio. We're celebrating our 300th birthday. And it's a special bonus to have your convention here to help us celebrate our tricentennial. You see, notably, this is also the 100th birthday of the San Antonio branch of the NAACP. So I always get excited about the future of Texas hearing Beto speak. He said 1914, so we weren't too far behind Beto. 1918, San Antonio citizen J.A. Grumbles read about the organization and realized that this city could benefit from your style of social justice activism. He gathered a group of community leaders, and the San Antonio branch was founded with 503 members. The San Antonio branch played a crucial role in gaining voting rights, combating discrimination, and ending racial segregation in our public schools, a fight that we continue to carry forward even to this day. Extraordinary leaders have emerged since then, such as the legendary Reverend Claude Black, a nationally known civil rights activist who got his start as a member of the NAACP Youth Council. Reverend Black, along with fellow San Antonians G.J. Sutton and Harry Burns, led the charge for justice in the city and beyond. They were dynamic, and they were impressive, and they made a difference. They did the hard work that was necessary to ensure that Black Americans also had a shot at the American dream. We remain grateful for their leadership and the continued leadership of today's San Antonio branch president, Oliver Hill, and his colleagues. We're proud of our shared history and grateful to call you a partner in the fight for civil rights and social justice. The work you have done has helped uplift the African American community, secure better wages for workers, and create a more equitable opportunity for all citizens, for all of our children. A lot of progress has been made, and a lot of lives have been improved since the NAACP was founded. But while celebrating progress is merited, current events highlight just how much we need civil rights champions today, despite the accomplishments that have been made. We must continue to work for civil rights and equality in San Antonio and across the nation. If we don't remain vigilant, we risk seeing reversals of the hard-won progress made possible by NAACP and other civil rights activists. The forces of regression and discrimination, we can agree, are working overtime these days. We cannot let them win. We will not let them win. And I want you to know that San Antonio will be a partner in that progress. We're excited to have you here this week. We look forward to the impressive lineup of programs and speakers that you've assembled. We all benefit from your work, and we appreciate the contributions in pursuit of an America that truly lives up to its promise for each and every one of us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to join you today. God bless the NAACP, and Viva San Antonio.
Thank you, Mayor Nierenberg. Now, delegates, I have another great person to introduce to you, a partner of the NAACP. We know there has been a rise in hate around the country. We saw that what occurred in Charlottesville. We know that African Americans are one of the targets, but there are many others, the LGBT community, the Jewish community, the Latino community. And so it's good to have allies that are out there fighting the battle and are indeed putting together information and strategies on fighting the rise of hate, which is indeed part of the theme of this conference. So please join me in welcoming Jonathan Greenblatt, who is the CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, who's been in the fight for so many years, from New York, who will bring greetings.
Thank you, Gary, and good morning, NAACP. It is so great for me to be here with you today. You know, 2 months ago, my friend and your president and CEO, Derek Johnson, addressed the Anti-Defamation League at our annual National Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C., in a room a lot like this. And in a speech no one on our side will soon forget, Derek urged us to see how our fears can propel us forward in the fight against hate rather than hold us back. He challenged us to use civility as a tool to combat bigotry and racism. And Derek reminded us that more than ever, the Jewish American and the African American communities need to lock arms and stand together against those who would harm us both. Derek brought all my people to their feet. And I got to admit, that is a tough act to follow. So today I'll confess that I might not deliver the same kind of fiery speech that Derek did, but I will deliver the same message. You see, the ADL and the NAACP are both organizations that are more than a century old. We are institutions in this country who have been there for the tough times, for the difficult moments. And again, we've stood together. We have fought for equal rights and dignity under the law, no matter how you pray or the color of your skin. That meant working together in courtrooms, or appealing to Congress, or marching in the streets. together. In fact, in my office in New York, right outside my desk, is a picture of my predecessor, the man who had my job, Ben Epstein, standing in solidarity with Dr. King, with Robert Kennedy, and with NAACP's Roy Wilkins, right in the Rose Garden of the White House. And at a time when the White House remembered to call out hate, the ADL stood there. Ben stood there with Roy after the violence in Birmingham in May 1963. You see, ADL's founders set our mission as, quote, stopping the defamation of the Jewish people and securing justice and fair treatment to all. They set out on this mission in 1913 when a Jewish man was lynched outside of Atlanta. We believed then, as we do today, that a minority can never be safe and equal and free in this country until all minorities are safe. That is why the ADL stood with the NAACP during the struggles of the Civil Rights era, and why we continue to do so today. We were privileged to work with you for more than a decade to pass the federal hate crimes law in 2009 that bears the name of James Byrd, who was murdered and lynched right here in Texas. And 2 years ago, we launched the 50 States Against Hate campaign, designed to improve the response of every state and every city in this country to hate violence. Because together we have fought back against efforts to reduce access to the polls and restrict voting rights. We have worked together on anti-lynching laws, school desegregation, lobbied for criminal justice reform, pushed for changes in sentencing guidelines, and we will keep up the fight. And while we work at a national level, we are continuing on the ground in communities across the country, not only to fight racism, but to promote inclusion and tolerance. And I'm glad, I'm proud, I am grateful that we are doing it together. Let me give you one example. Last spring in Massachusetts, our charter school had a policy that prohibited girls from wearing hair extensions and braids. A policy that clearly was targeted at young black girls. When twin 15-year-olds, Deanna and Maya Cook, were singled out and punished, their family called both the NAACP and the ADL to help. And what resulted, what happened, was an amazing display of advocacy and coalition work, again, together. We launched a petition. We protested together. We encouraged investigations. We elevated the voices of those black girls, provided educational resources, and together helped change and stop that policy of discrimination. Now, some might say that it's a small victory. Some might suggest that it really doesn't matter how girls wear their hair. But I say no. It's one that, God willing, can show what happens when you change hearts and minds from one town to one city to one county to one state to across the country. But I will acknowledge that sometimes the fights are harder and the stakes are higher. Just over 3 years ago, we mourned when a white supremacist gunned down 9 black churchgoers at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. Our hearts broke when these lives were taken in a place of worship. And in just a few weeks, it will be the first anniversary of a white supremacist neo-Nazi march in Charlottesville, Virginia. And what happened that day reminded us that no matter what they say, and regardless of those who try to divide us, that we are living in a moment when those in our country who hate blacks, who hate Jews, who hate Latinos, who hate the LGBT, and anyone different from them, they feel emboldened. They feel empowered. And who are these people? They venerate slaveholders. They champion the Confederacy. They imitate Nazis. They seek an America that is radically different than the one that Roy and Ben, than the one that Derek and I, than the one that the ADL, the NAACP, have been fighting for so many years. And that is why our work is not yet done. In the weeks and months to come, ADL and the NAACP must renew and re-energize our long-standing civil rights partnership. We must stand firm for our values and our convictions, because they're not yours and mine. They are American values and convictions, no matter what you hear from those at the highest levels. And together we can oppose every form of bigotry and prejudice. Together we can track and expose the hate groups that threaten our churches and our synagogues, our communities and our families. We must keep up the fight in the courts and in Congress for laws that are just. We must fight against the voter suppression and promote voter participation. We must fight for the judges that are just and for a Supreme Court that protects the constitutional rights of every American. And beyond the law, get past the policy, we must fight for a society where young people of color will not be suspects simply because they're studying in a dorm, or using a coupon in a store, or driving through a neighborhood, or sitting down in a Starbucks. And so, as Derek so ably put it, when he humbled us all, we must put aside our fears, even our differences, and muster the courage and conviction to fight for the America of equality and justice that we all love and treasure. And I know, I believe we can do that together. I know the NAACP will do that, I know the ADL will do that, and I know together we are stronger and can push this country forward. And you know that's because the man who you so ably asked to be your 19th president and CEO, the man I am proud to call my friend, and the man who is our partner in the good fight, Derek Johnson, is your leader. So thank you, NAACP, for the gift of your friendship. We are grateful to be your partners, and we look forward to fighting the good fight with you for the next 100 years. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Donna, thank you very much. You know, that's part of our theme, as we heard our chairman discuss last night. It is defeat hate and vote. We now have the occasion to bring forth someone who is going to give us the steadfast charge on that second part. We've just heard a discussion about the hate part, but now we're going to talk about the things that we really need to do as we take and move forward and leave this conference. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you L. Joy Williams, President of the Brooklyn NAACP branch from New York. who will give the steadfast charge, and what I've come to know is she will definitely bring the charge. Please welcome her.
Good morning, fellow NAACP delegates. To the Board of Trustees, to all in their respective places, I greet you in the name of love, justice, and freedom from the People's Republic of Brooklyn, all right, where I serve as the branch president under the legendary leadership of our state conference president, Dr. Hazel N. Dukes. And I am forever thankful to our Vice Chair, Karen Boykin-Towns, my friend, mentor, matron of honor, who along with the late Reverend Anita Burson brought me to this great organization. If you've ever had the pleasure of meeting and chatting with Mrs. Mildred Roxborough, chances are she has mentioned that you should visit the NAACP archives at the Library of Congress. A few years ago, I followed her advice and went in search not only for the artifacts of those names we know, but of those names who have been lost to history. I found a treasure trove of correspondence that showed the deep level of commitment that countless people had to our organization and our mission. I read letters from branch presidents and legal redress chairs sent to Thurgood Marshall looking for legal assistance for housing and employment discrimination. I found organizing plans of countless campaigns to demand justice for police abuse and efforts to desegregate schools. And yes, I even found letters from Ella Baker to branch presidents chastising them for sending their membership reports too late. Going through those archives will give you a boost of energy. I know it certainly renewed my spirit, because it reminded me that our ancestors did exactly what our chairman told us was our charge last night: not to agonize, but to organize. So think about it. NAACP members for most of our organization's history had to organize their communities in perilous conditions. They organized against racist presidents, senators, congressional members, governors, mayors, and sheriffs. They were waging campaigns against people who were comfortable and settled in their racism and bigotry, and yet they won many battles. If they were able to wage those battles against those immense odds, how dare we buckle at the knees against those same racist, hateful, and bigoted forces now? As the chairman told us last night, let's not agonize, it's time to organize. Organized like our ancestors who immediately after the indignity of slavery built communities and created spaces to educate themselves and their children. Organized like Mother Sister Ida B. Wells, who traversed this country telling the horror of lynchings and demanding justice for their families. Organized like Mother Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, who asserted her right to vote, organized, registered, and mobilized her community and challenged a major political party to address the needs of her people. And organized like Mother Sister Septima Clark, who taught thousands not only how to register and vote, but how to wield political power. Our charge is to defeat hate and vote. But the real key to our freedom and prosperity is not just voting to get one bigoted orange man out of the White House. We've all heard and probably used the phrase, our ancestors died for our right to vote. But what is missing in this simple statement is not that they were fighting for the right to go in the booth and cast a ballot for a president and then check out until another 4 years. More important than a vote for president, they wanted the vote for local economic control of their community. They wanted to elect school board members. They wanted to elect judges and sheriffs who weren't sons of the KKK. They wanted to elect district attorneys that would prosecute and hold people accountable for police brutality. They fought, they marched, they rallied, they lobbied, and demanded access to the ballot because they knew that the right to vote was intrinsically tied to the full rights of citizenship that the Constitution promises. And let's be clear. Our fight for justice is not about winning hearts and minds. Because if we would have waited to win the hearts and minds of racists and bigots, we'd still be enslaved or under Jim Crow. right. Our fight is to get laws on the books, to create policies that benefit our people, and to elect the people who will enforce those laws and policies, and if they don't, we vote them out. We have the ultimate power, and it's our responsibility not to keep the knowledge of that power to ourselves. We have to organize and educate beyond our comfort zone, beyond who we think needs to be in the room, beyond our class, beyond our ethnicity and our gender. If we're going to continue to be the largest, the oldest, the baddest, and the boldest civil rights organization in this country, then we need to organize with and stand up for those who need our organizing power the most. And that would include 26 transgender women of color who were targeted and killed last year and continue to be in harm's way. That includes the millions who now sit in jails because they're too poor to afford bail, and the millions of our people who can't afford to come to conferences like our own. Our charge, fellow NAACP delegates, is clear. Our people cannot wait. They cannot afford to wait for us to vote out this hateful administration. We can't wait for the next Obama. We need to get out in these streets, walk these buildings in our neighborhoods, talk to the young people on our block, and do more than post our events on Facebook and expect people to show up. Our charge is to show out and to organize. Our charge is to show out and organize to defeat this hate and send it back to the depths of hell from whence it came. Our charge, NAACP delegates, our charge, Chairman, our charge is to defeat hate and vote.
Vote. Defeat hate, vote. Well, I think we can say she brought it. Can the church say amen? Can the church say amen? Thank you, Ms. Williams. Yeah. We will now have the presentation of the William Robert Ming Advocacy Award, which is given annually to an individual in the legal profession who has provided outstanding service in the area of civil rights. This time we have someone we'll be awarding who I think may be the best trial lawyer in America, someone whose first cousin comes to each one of our conventions and drives, who's here now. So I think that's really important, but we want to know that our legal department, which has tried to be on the pulse of civil rights. They've filed cases involving DACA to protect individuals from Haiti or to address gerrymandering by using prisons improvidently to include any electoral districts. So they've been on top of that, and I really appreciate our general counsel for the work that they've done. We've got a great CLE going on now regarding voting rights, and I want to thank our CEO Derek Johnson for helping make that happen. But I want to ask us to please welcome our General Counsel, Brad Berry, as he gives the Ming Award to a tremendous person who's very worthy. Please welcome Brad Berry.
Good morning, NAACP. My name is Bradford Berry, and it's my privilege to serve as General Counsel of this great association. It's also my honor to present this year's William Robert Ming Advocacy Award This award is named in honor of a brilliant civil rights strategist, trial attorney, and academic who blazed new trails for African Americans throughout his long and illustrious career. After distinguishing himself as a brilliant scholar at the University of Chicago School of Law and graduating with highest honors in 1933, Mr. Ming was appointed to the faculties of both the Howard University School of Law and the University of Chicago School of Law, where he was the first African American law professor. As a litigator with the NAACP for more than 2 decades, Mr. Ming worked on a number of groundbreaking civil rights cases, including Sweat versus Painter and Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. In fact, it was said that during Mr. Ming's time with the NAACP, even the great Thurgood Marshall wouldn't make a move without consulting Bob Ming first. As a legal scholar, strategist, and civil rights advocate, Mr. Ming was without equal, and so is the award bearing his name. The 2018 recipient of the Ming Award is a true giant in the legal profession, Mr. Willie Gary. Mr. Gary is a senior partner in the law firm bearing his name in Stuart, Florida, and he is a nationally renowned trial attorney. He has won some of the largest jury verdicts and settlements in U.S. history against some of the largest corporations in our country, including Disney, Anheuser-Busch, Motorola, Microsoft, and Dell. In addition, and perhaps less well known, is the fact that he has brought many cases on behalf of victims of racial discrimination, including, by way of example, employment discrimination lawsuits against the Coca-Cola Corporation, the town of Palm Beach, Florida, the city of Thomasville, Georgia, among others. Mr. Gary's record of courtroom victories against powerful interests is such that he has earned the nickname the Giant Killer. But this slayer of corporate giants has humble roots. He was born in 1947 in Eastman, Georgia, one of 11 children. He was raised in migrant farming communities in Georgia, Florida, and the Carolinas. A steadfast aspiration to earn a college education led Mr. Gary to attend Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, where he earned a bachelor's degree in 1971. From there, he went on to earn his law degree in 1974 from North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina. Thus, amply credentialed, he went back to Florida, where he and his wife, Gloria, proceeded to open Stuart, Florida's first African-American law firm, which now consists of 37 attorneys, a team of paralegals, and professional staff of over 100 people. While media portrayals of Mr. Gary often focus on his hard-earned wealth, he is passionate about giving back to the African-American community. He has donated millions of dollars to Shaw University and other HBCUs across the country. In 1994, he and Mrs. Gary formed the Gary Foundation in order to enhance the lives of young people through education and drug prevention. He is active in a number of community organizations, including the NAACP, where he donated a building to his local branch, the National Urban League, the United Way of Martin County, Florida, and the Martin Memorial Hospital Foundation. The world was introduced to Mr. Gary when he was featured on the CBS program 60 Minutes in 2001. Some of you might remember that. For many young African-American attorneys, seeing the 60 Minutes profile on Mr. Gary proved that with hard work and determination, success could be had for African-American attorneys in the legal profession. And so, Mr. Gary, on behalf of the African-American attorneys who came behind you, thank you for your shining example of what we might aspire to become, even if owning a private jet named Wings of Justice 2 might prove somewhat beyond our grasp. It is truly an honor and a privilege to present Mr. Willie Gary of Stuart, Florida, with the NAACP's 2018 William Robert Ming Advocacy Award.
Good morning. It's good to be here with the NAACP. And I say that because, but for you, but for this great organization and many others, Willie Gary wouldn't be standing here this morning. To President Derrick Johnson, let's give him a big hand for a great job that he's doing. And Bradford Berry, I need you to know that I enjoyed all of those good things that you were saying about me. As a matter of fact, at one point I was in the back, but it started to get good to me. Not only did I started to believe half of it, but just as he was about to stop talking, I wanted to tell him to just keep on talking. Now, I'm a trial lawyer, and I sue people for a living. That's what I do. So I want to know, who was it on the committee that placed me behind the young lady that just finished? Because you're going to get sued this morning, Doc. Oh, yeah, you're going to get it. Let's give her another big hand. Give her a big hand. And I need you to know that God has blessed us to do a lot of things in our law firm, but you know, I always, no matter where I am, I do this because it's so true. There's a young lady that I met in the 2nd grade. As a matter of fact, since I have not the pulpit, but I have the mic here. You need to know that we are celebrating our 50th anniversary. I met her in the 2nd grade. And Bradford, she used to hate the sound of my name. Every time she'd hear the name Willie Gary, she would just cry. Couldn't stand that Willie Gary. But I knew she was digging on me, you understand. And I like to always give her the honor and the praise because she was there when I had holes in my pants. She was there when I didn't have shoes to wear to school. She was there. And I want to say to the NAACP and the world, Willie Gary understands that whatever I am or ever hope to be, it's because I've had a good woman standing by my side. Stand up, baby. Stand up. Let's give her a big hand. Gloria Gary, Dr. Gloria Gary. Is that all right, ladies? I can't hear you. Is that all right, ladies? Let me close by challenging you to do one thing for me. I know we're going through some tough political times and our togetherness is needed like never before, but let me tell you who else needs all of us. Historically black colleges. Let's give black colleges a big hand this morning. And let's support our historically black colleges. And I say that because they were there when we had no place to go. They were there. I wouldn't be here today but for historically black colleges. And give our young people a chance to encourage them to go to our black colleges. Let me tell you something. If your child, or like with my boys, can spend 4 or 5 years, my boy spent 4 or 5 years, your child spent 4 years. If they can do it at historically black colleges, chances are they've gotten one of the best educations you will get anywhere in this nation. I'm a living witness to that. I graduated from Shaw University, historically black college, NCCU Law School, a black law school. And I have lawyers working for me that graduated from Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. And I sign their paychecks every 2 weeks. Let's give black colleges a big hand. And let me close by saying, let's support our students, our young students when they get out of college. Get them a job, help them get a job, help them find work to do. They don't need to hear this, are you qualified? You wrap your arms around them and support them. They are more than qualified. You talk about being qualified, I think it's only fitting that I tell you this story, which is a true story, because it says a lot about the NAACP. You talking about being qualified? Our young people are more than qualified. Back in the late 60s, Gloria and I were driving home from college. Just gotten my first car in my life. Had my college t-shirt on. Y'all remember the days when that first year you couldn't wait to get back home just to show off your university t-shirt or your college t-shirt? It was a big deal. And Gloria, along with my son Kenny, we were driving back. I had just gotten a new car too. Had an 8-track tape in there. Jane Brown was singing, Papa Got a Brand New Band. I was rolling. Coming through Georgia of all places. In the South, anywhere it was the same. Foot got a little heavy. Now you talking about being qualified. Our young people are more than qualified. Foot got a little heavy. Now, never carry a driver's license on me. I don't carry a wallet. Gloria gets after me all the time. Why don't you? I just don't carry, didn't have driver's license at first on me. Now y'all talking about being qualified, listen to this. So I'm driving, foot got a little heavy, man, and before I knew it, I saw a big blue light flashing behind me. Boy, I saw that light, I snatched that 8-track tape out of there. I started singing None But the Righteous. And you talking about being qualified. I got out scratching and patting, knew I didn't have anything on me, you understand? I didn't have driver's license at first on me. But I'm scratching and patting like I had something, and all of a sudden this tall, big belly, snuff dipping police officer came up to me, and I'm just scratching and patting. You know I'm a brother from the hood, understand? I'm taking it down to the wire. But I knew I didn't have any license on me. But y'all talking about being qualified. He came up to me, and I'm scratching and patting. He said, boy, let me see your driver's license. I'm scratching and patting. Didn't have it, but I inadvertently pulled out my NAACP card. And I was about to tell him it was my NAACP card, but he snatched it away from me. He gonna read it himself. He snatched it away. He looked at it, and he looked at it, and he looked at it. He said, boy, you better had your driver's license on you. Get on out of here. Then he stopped me. He said, wait a minute, he wanted to give me a ticket anyway. But guess what? He asked me to write the ticket out for him. And I did. And I signed his name on the ticket. Thank God for the NAACP. Never look down on anybody unless you're picking them up. And always No matter how big you get, how much money you make, always keep God in your plans. For I declare that if you keep him in your plans, the roads will always rise to meet you. The wind will always be at your backs. The sun will shine warmly upon your faces, and the rain will fall softly upon your fields. And until we meet again, remember, God will take care of you. Thank you, and may God bless you.
I think we can see why people consider him the best trial lawyer in America. It's not every day that the New York Times does a two-page article about you, or that 60 Minutes does a feature presentation on you. You can see how great he is. And so it's much gratitude that we have to acknowledge and confirm the contributions that have been made by Willie Gary. He's indeed changed the perception of the African-American lawyer in other areas of litigation that are not traditional, your tort law and things of that nature, and the big companies that he's fought and brought down to their knees. Now we've come to the main event here for this morning's session. And I want to introduce someone who will introduce our new CEO that we all know is doing such a tremendous job for us and leading us into a very difficult time period in this nation. But I know the person I'm about to introduce has become a real partner for the NAACP, actively working with us on voter registration, and is going to be an essential partner in trying to get people to turn out to vote. Because indeed, I think we all know, as we've talked about so much during this convention, that's going to be extremely important. So I would like to welcome Dr. Jerry Young, National President of the National Baptist Convention from Jackson, Mississippi. Please give him a warm NAACP welcome.
I am delighted and privileged to be here. I am thankful for this priceless privilege to stand here and to greet you and to present a young man in whom I have found great favor. To the presiding officer, chairman of the board, members of the board, all the official staff, and to the members of the NAACP. I ask you to indulge me for a moment because I am convinced that the former speaker needs to be arrested. I had great aspirations as a young man to be an attorney, and providentially so, I am not an attorney, not in the sense that Willie Garrett is, but I think he ought to be arrested because I think he's preaching without a license. I ask only for one additional indulgence. Allow me to give deference to, and I trust she's here, Aneva Pittman from Jackson, Mississippi. I was delighted when the president was elected and then asked me to come here to present him here today. The late Reverend Dr. C.A.W. Clark was the eminent pastor of Good Street Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. Dr. Clark said on several occasions that if a person deserves a long introduction, that person does not need it. And if a person needs a long introduction, that person does not deserve it. And for that reason, I will not ask you to indulge me long. However, I do acknowledge that with some degree of restraint, when Baptist preachers see crowds like this, I am delighted again and privileged to present here this young man from Jackson, Mississippi, a young man I've had the privilege to have known for quite some time. I have watched him. And the reason I'm so delighted to present him is because, unlike some persons I know, there are a lot of leaders who have a very good audio, but they have no video. I am delighted to present this young man because he has a video that matches his audio. Derek doesn't just talk it, he walks it. I am delighted to present him here, and perhaps the best thing I can say about him is that Derek undoubtedly is competent. He's clear-sighted, and he's committed. But my brothers and my sisters, allow me to say to you, Derek is compassionate. And he has the kind of compassion that Christ had when he saw people who were hurting. The scriptures declared that he was moved with compassion. And that word is splonchnitzomai, and it means literally to be moved in your inner being, so much so until you're motivated to move the misery. I want to tell you, I have seen Derek help move misery in the state of Mississippi. Let me congratulate you for having chosen him. My brothers and my sisters, allow me again to just bring him here. May I say to you, I would ask that you would do what they do in the Baptist Convention. Whenever they bring the president forward, someone says to everybody who's gathered, here is our chieftain. Why don't we rise to our feet, give him a rousing round of appreciation, and call him forward. Will you all rise and give him, I give to you our president. Our president. I give to you our president. The man God has given to lead us forward. Let us receive Derek Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, you don't appreciate family until something happened. And on yesterday, my daughter was in an accident, second time in a month where she had a concussion. And so if I appear to be somewhat distracted, I was a nervous wreck last night. So much so my wife put me out to bed because I wouldn't let her go to sleep because I wouldn't stop moving. But we are here this morning for a reason. I am pleased to report that my daughter is doing fine. She's at the hotel with my mother, but I'm also a blessed man to have a wife like Letitia who put up with me, and I would like for her to stand up at this time, and please give her a hand. And as many of you know, I am a Baptist. I'm not a Mormon, but I do have 5 kids. Tell the joke that when I met my wife on campus, I was slightly older. I was on that long-term plan Willie Gary was talking about in terms of finishing school. And I recall a period in time, I said, you know, we're going to get married, we're going to have 5 kids. She was like, yeah, right. We woke up one morning, she was about to finish law school, and we said, we got 5 kids. 3 of my kids are here, Jamil, Nia, and Nasur. Please stand up. Let's give them a hand. It's important for me to acknowledge my family because when I took on this awesome responsibility, I knew it would be a lot. I did not know the level of sacrifice one must give in terms of being present for family. One person asked me, have you moved to Baltimore? I said, no. He said, why not? Because I live on a plane. And the reality for this position, it requires one to constantly be on the move, especially during a time like this. I'm also happy to have my in-laws here, Reverend and Mrs. James and Rose Simmons, a cousin from Detroit, Keith Sanders, and many, many, many mentors. I have a habit of collecting individuals who can tell me what to do because constructive criticism is an important growth mechanism for anyone. If you find someone who is resistant to receiving constructive criticism, that is an individual that's soon to self-destruct. Because none of us have all the answers, and I have decided long ago I prefer not to repeat someone else's mistake. If I can just learn it from them, I can take the shortcut around that reality. Chairman Russell, who is perhaps the hardest working NAACP peer you will ever meet, but the beautiful thing about Chairman Russell, he is truly a selfless person. Titles, it's irrelevant. At the end of the day, he wants to get the work done. To Vice Chair Karen Boykins-Town, a quiet, disciplined, focused individual who every week give me and the chairman a checklist that we go through. And I appreciate her addition to this triad that we have created because she is both politically savvy, business sophisticated, and focused on this association to ensure that our local units get what you are deserving of. The members of the National Board of Directors, the members of the NAACP Foundation, thank you for your governance, your stewardship, and sometimes your agitation. You know, oftentimes I get this question, is the NAACP board too large? Unlike some of my predecessors, I say no. So we have a representative body. And if we're not able to defend who we are, what makes us unique, what makes us the leading civil rights organization in the nation, none of us should sit in the seats we sit in. A little understanding, and I won't through the history of the NAACP because the chairman took my speech. I went to the hospital to check on my daughter, and I looked for my speech, and he took it. I looked up, he was reading it on the stage. He's a selfless individual. He did that for me. He wanted to make sure the word got out. We have a representative body. We're 109 years old. There are things we got right to last this long, and our governance structure is not a problem. It's an opportunity for us to get the perspective of the African American communities. See, understand that black folks, we're not a monolith. We've never been, we never will be, and if we think we will become that, that will be the beginning of the end. So there are 5 ways to get on the board. Here at the convention, our units are able to elect members at large. We have regional representation. The board members elect individuals from the board, and then we have 7 seats for our young people. That is a representative body. We operate in a small d democracy. We cannot profess to want something that we're not prepared to handle internal to our operations. The NAACP, we are a bottom-up structure, not top-down. We're just like Dr. Young, who just left the stage. We're a bunch of Baptists, whether or not we're Methodists or not. See, in the governance structure of the Baptist church, the Black Baptist church, it is governed from the pews. There's no bishop to send an edict down. The members, once a year, have the annual meeting, and they elect or get rid of the pastor. Bottom-up structure. It allows for a level of diversity and creativity and tension to pour the best out of all of us. We are the NAACP. Last week, the Justice Department announced that they are going to reopen the Emmett Till investigation. Dr. Young, he neglected to say he's from the Delta. The Delta was a difficult place to grow up in. You know, a young man like him, you know, it was hard growing up during that period of time. And Emmett Till being a 13-year-old boy who came from North Mississippi, Chicago, down to visit his family, only to find himself being accused of whistling at a white woman and as a result getting lynched. The Justice Department, after all these years, decided to reopen the case. They decided to reopen the case because the accusation was false. The white woman who said the event happened has now come forth and said it never happened. In 1955, hate dominated the land, not just in Mississippi, all across this nation. Hate was the tool that was used to maintain domination and control. Oftentimes, we get caught in the emotional tool and forget who's holding the tool and for what purpose. See, hate is a tool. It is not the thing. Power is the thing. Hate is the tool that have always been used to separate people, to create an otherness across the land. The Justice Department has announced that they're going to reopen the Emmett Till case. Individuals who are involved are advanced 75 and 80 years old if they are still alive. You know, the unique thing about the Emmett Till case was the reaction of the NAACP. See, in 1955, in the Deep South, Mississippi definitely been included, hate and fear was the dominant tool that was used to maintain a level of control that we read about today. Can you imagine the individuals overcoming their fear and willing to step up and fight against a system that was so oppressive there were no release valves? couldn't go to the court. Law and order was keeping you in order. The federal government was muted in their response to the reality of what was taking place. In 1955, in Money, Mississippi, hate dominated the land to maintain power. Oftentimes, we forget about the local people, the little people, the geniuses that are on the ground. An individual by the name of T.R.M. Howard, medical doctor who grew up in Kentucky, who went to an HBCU, Oakwood College, and received his medical degree and came to a small town called Mount Bayou, Mississippi. And Dr. Howard, in 1942, he began to recognize the injustice that was common in Mississippi, common in the South, began to organize. And over time, he had an organization called the Regional Council of Negro Leadership. And there was another group of young people who was recruited to go to fight for freedoms they could not appreciate at home. They returned home, and unlike many of their counterparts, they did not take part in the Great Migration and move north to Chicago and Cleveland and Cincinnati and New York and Detroit. They decided to stay home and fight. They were like many other people across the South, like Harry T. Moore, like many other people, like E.D. Nixon, like many other people who decided that they were not going to allow hate to run them away from protecting their people. Dr. T.R.M. Howard, he created an infrastructure. When those World War II veterans came home, they fell in line, and you know some of them, like Aaron Henry and M.Z. Moore and C.C. Bryant and Steptoe and Gilbert Mason. They created an infrastructure. And they used this vehicle we now call the NAACP. And when the incident with Medgar Evers, when Emmett Till took place, Dr. Howard assigned one of his insurance agents to go investigate the case. His name was Medgar Evers. And as Medgar Evers, then field secretary of the NAACP, began to go onto the plantations and interview sharecroppers to find out what took place, he would get the information and take it to the nearest railroad station where the Pullman porters would get the information and take it up to Chicago so the Chicago Defender can report the news. In the midst of all of that, Emmett Till's mother decided that her child, who was beat so badly, the world should see what they did to her child, and she decided to keep the casket open. And as a result of that funeral and that open casket, people began to tweet what had taken place. We had Twitter in 1955. They called it Jet Magazine. The NAACP championed that case and it provided the information, although no one was convicted of that heinous crime against that child, a 13-year-old boy. But it motivated something in 13-year-olds all across the country, because what Dr. Howard created through that infrastructure that was building on the back of Ida B. Wells, that was building through the secret society of a Prince Hall Mason that was being developed to protect our communities, those World War II veterans who were not nonviolent. Let's be clear, this nonviolent stuff will get you killed. Hartman Turnbull was known to have a gun everywhere he went. Aaron Henry acted like he didn't have a gun, but James Figgs always had a gun everywhere he went. M.Z. Moore had more shotguns at his gas station in his house than one could count, because they understood that they were in a fight for their lives. Created an infrastructure, and 13-year-old boys and girls across the country seen the image in Jet Magazine. They was going for the beauty of the week. Before they got to the beauty of the week, they seen this open casket. And And when Ella Baker decided to break away from the philosophy of a Thurgood Marshall in the NAACP, because we have to be honest about the history. Thurgood Marshall didn't believe in protesting in the street. Walter White felt that Mississippi, the only good thing that can happen to it, that we need to pave it. No one should live there anyway. Gloucester Current wasn't always a friend of the folks on the ground. We have to recognize the true history of the NAACP through this struggle we call the Civil Rights Movement, so we never repeat the mistakes of the past. See, the value of this organization will never come from 4805. It will always come from the 2,200 units across this country, because you are the power of this association. And what Dr. Howard created, those World War II veterans, along with some courageous women like Winston Hudson and Annie Devine, continue to build out this infrastructure. And as a result of Ella Baker knowing of this infrastructure, she recruited a young math teacher by the name of Bob Moses to go to Mississippi. Now, this story is not a Mississippi story, but I'm only going to talk to you what I know about. And I know about because those many, many mentors that I speak of this morning, I sit under them and learn from them, because I am very clear that it is not about me. I am a part of a continuum of a movement. And the worst thing that we could have ever done is vest the movement in a personality, because personalities would fail us every time. Movements are not based on egocentric personality. It's based on community-centric approaches. And the NAACP, we have the community to approach the thing that we need to address. Defeat, hate, vote. That infrastructure allow for young students to come down. Stokely Carmichael, Cortland Cox, who's here with us today, Hollis Watkins, Dory Ladner, Joyce Ladner. They built out an infrastructure under the tutelage and leadership and wisdom of World War II veterans who were our branch presidents and our members, and they challenged democracy as it was being applied to black folk. We must be clear about our purpose. Our purpose is not about coming to conventions and being entertained. We must be clear about our purpose. Our purpose is not about running behind ancillary conversations or having counter-protests. Now, I remember when I walked into the position and Charlottesville took off and people were going to have counter-protests, and I was asked, I said, what is the NAACP going to do? Are you going to join the counter-protest? I said, why? That's not our role. Not saying it's not someone else's role, it's not our role. Being clear around our purpose. Hate is an emotion, voting is about power. It is our role as the NAACP to ensure that we empower and equip our members and our units and our communities with the information necessary to leverage our collective vote to seek outcomes that best represent our community. We're an advocacy organization. I love when L. Joy got up here and gave the challenge. Wasn't that a beautiful piece? A local leader, a young leader, a vibrant personality who understands the difference between power and emotion. You know, appealing to man's heart is just like appealing to his liver. It ain't nothing but another organ in his body. And we would never change one's heart, but we can hold them accountable to a rule of law that provides equal protection for everyone. Our purpose is to impact the formation of public policy so that our children can pursue a future that we would want them to have. You know, it's a unique opportunity we have during this juncture. That opportunity is to have that wake-up call. James Weldon Johnson wrote in his poem that we now call the Negro or Black National Anthem, lest our heart, drunk with the wine of the world, our God, we forget thee. Lest our feet stray from the places we met thee. Since the Emmett Till scenario, we have made tremendous strides. Those young people who partnered with those World War II veterans under a tutelage of Dr. Howard, they created a space where Fannie Lou Hamer her voice could be lifted up, and we integrated a political party that was creating barriers for our participation, opening up a way that President Obama could be President Obama. We oftentimes celebrate Martin Luther King, and we forget about the Fannie Lou Hamers. So if you understand the history of what took place when Fannie Lou Hamer was advocating for fair representation and to follow the law, King was trying to get them to take a deal that they were not going to take. The wisdom of the Fannie Lou Hamers of the world came from the ground. The kings of the world were inspirational speakers, but they were not on the ground anymore. And one of the things we must do as NAACP, we must move away from social justice celebrities. And focus our effort in the communities where the people who need us most reside, so we can amplify their voices and create the vehicles so they can collectively leverage their power. Being clear of our purpose is important. When I look at the state of Michigan and what Wendell Anthony and Yvonne White is doing in leading a ballot referendum to ensure that the ballot box is open, that's clear of purpose. When I stand here in the state of Texas and review the last 5 years of the lawsuits that Gary Anderson and the Texas State Conference have filed to ensure that we're not drawn out of political boundaries so we can elect a candidate of our choice, or that voter IDs are not put in place to suppress our vote, or that the voting rights laws apply to all citizens, that's clearness of purpose. When I look at my brother sitting on the side, amen to me at every minute, Dr. Barber, building a movement out of the North Carolina State Conference that's national and international in scope to bring the question of equity in our system to bear so that poverty is not a norm, but it should be an outlier. That's clearness of purpose. And someone say, well, are you supporting the Poor People Campaign and Dr. Barber? Yes, we're supporting the Poor People Campaign and Dr. Barber. The Poor People Campaign and Dr. Barber is NAACP, and let us never forget that. It don't take a vote on the floor to say we support what's right. It doesn't take a vote among the board to support what is already a part of what we do. Clearness of purpose is not for us to get in public debates with 45, because I was told a long time ago, a fool and a wise man from afar in an argument, you can't tell the difference. Trump didn't create racism and hatred. He's only opened the door for those who practice it out loud. Love the story when I was watching 60 Minutes and I seen a gentleman who was falsely accused of a crime he did not commit, had been in prison for over 20 years in Alabama. And President Hamilton, he got out of jail, and the reporter said, there's been a lot of advancements since you went to jail. Can you share with us, what are some of the most remarkable things you've seen? And the gentleman, he paused, he said, when I was released, I was waiting for my brother, and he came and he picked me up, and we were in the car, and we was talking, he was catching me up, and we got ready to get on the freeway, and we had to take a left turn, and I heard a voice, left turn, 200 feet. He said, I was shook. I asked my brother, who was that white woman and how did she get in this car? and never seen or heard of a GPS or a cell phone. But it was there all the time as soon as he got in the car. We cannot act as if racial hatred just started because Trump is in office. It was been there all the time. The only difference between now and whenever is because we were successful in beating back the normalcy of the practice of hate in the public square. See, the success of the NAACP is the fight that we put forward, and any time we fight, we win. The problem is we don't fight enough. The problem is we're not focused on the fight that we're taking on. The problem is that we're fighting each other too much. The problem is the fight is there for us to engage in, and we must do that now. You know, the beautiful thing about this association is the array of the personalities. And as I look across this room, I see individuals representing over 42 states out of the 50 states. We have local units in 47 states out of the 50. I met a brother 2 nights ago from Anchorage, Alaska, who said, we may need you to come up there. We have another branch president from North Carolina but live in Hawaii. Black folks do live in Iowa because there we have a few branch presidents here from Iowa. I know, Betty, I know. There's a whole lot of y'all there. We're the NAACP. We don't follow movements, we define movements. The chair and I, we started on this voyage of reimagining. We got to reimagine opportunities around education and all of our programs. We cannot fall into a false argument, a false choice of public versus charter schools. That's a false choice. The real question is quality education for all children. We got to reimagine opportunities. We no longer need to debate whether or not environmental justice is a civil rights issue when black folks are being poisoned in East Chicago, Illinois, or Indiana. We got to reimagine opportunities and take on the fights where they exist. We got to reimagine justice. We can't chase behind the argument of mass incarceration. We need to figure out who's throwing the babies in the river and unelect some district attorneys to make sure our children are thrown away. We got to reimagine how we look at voting rights. You close your eyes and go back 20 years, the same conversations we're having around voting rights, almost the same conversations we're having now. And when the individuals came up with the concept of the Voting Rights Act, it was great for those 50 years. And we need to continue to fight for it. However, they've already crippled one leg of the three-leg stool, Section 5. Section 2 is next, and the whole act will fall. What if we reimagine justice this way? Complete elimination of voter registration. What if we reimagine it this way? Compulsory voting, like 200 countries across this country currently practice, where it is a requirement for people to vote, not a chore. No, 96% of individuals in Australia vote, compulsory voting. 93% of citizens in Germany vote, compulsory voting. 92% of Canadians vote, compulsory voting. We are doing well if 70% of the population vote. And that's doing presidential elections. We got to reimagine the conversation around wellness. We got to reimagine the responsibility around our vote. Because if we cast our vote, there are some folks who get elected as a result of our vote who should be accountable to our community. And it's not a transactional relationship, it's an ongoing dialogue. Now, we have a Supreme Court nominee who the Senate is considering. And I made it very clear to the leader of one of the parties that this is a non-negotiable reality for us. That if there is a single member of the United States Senate who rely on black votes, if they betray us on this issue, it should be the NAACP job to deny them of every black vote they ever will get. See, the power of the Supreme Court is one in which is a lifetime appointment. The impact of the Supreme Court will be felt for the next 30 to 50 years. Elections have consequences, and now we're living in the midst of the consequence. We got to reimagine what we're going to do over the next 5 years. Midterm election. Presidential election is the high water mark. We have units almost in every community across this nation. High water mark for us in presidential, we turn out. Midterm election, we don't. We have to increase turnout. But it's a responsibility of the national staff to equip you with the tools to do so. So as we look forward, Jamal Watkins will be reaching out to you because that's important, and we know what the data is. We know who you are, we know where you live, and it's our job to get you out to the polls. For our units, we make it too difficult for you to do your job. We've cleared up the backlog of the membership. The next step is to give you a portal where you can communicate with us so you're not calling a phone that's not being answered. That we get rid of all of these Article 10s and 9s and 8s and we start focus on the work that we need to focus on, because who cares who's being removed from office if they wasn't doing the job anyway and the person coming behind them not doing the job anyway. Our fight is no different than any other fight we've taken on. It's about democracy. Defeating hate is crucial to remove that tool so we can get to the question of power. I'm going to close with this because I know I'm boring y'all to death. I am not Leon Russell. He took my speech last night. A reminder for me anytime I stand in front of an audience, and some of you have heard this story before, is my own personal story. Growing up in Detroit, Michigan, on 23rd Street, the house still standing there. It's kind of leaning a little bit, but it's still there. Single parent. I didn't know no difference. In fact, had my father showed up, I'd have told him go on away because I got it good. I don't need you. But if y'all see him, tell him I said hello. Blessed by all measures. The poor little rich kid in the community. Where others may not have had, I actually had, and when I didn't have, I had a plethora of people I can call on to get. Folks who cook good food, and I ain't want it, so they go give me McDonald's. I was spoiled. Graduated from high school with a 1.8 GPA. I had a ball. I was on the multi-year plan. How did I get in college? I don't even want to talk about how I actually got in college. But when I got there, I was on a multi-year plan, not the 4-year plan, Dr. Brown. But I recall once I got to Mississippi, I had a literature professor by the name of Dr. Simmons. Dr. Simmons was a unique man, and many of you have heard me tell this story. He's a unique-looking fellow. He was a Morehouse man. He was proud, arrogant. Y'all know how, Dr. Brown, y'all know how y'all do at Morehouse. Just, typically I see 3 or 4 Morehouse guys and say, y'all go in the corner and do that. I don't want to see all that. They just, right? But proud, that's a beautiful thing to see with men. He had an afro. He never picked the left side right here. It was always flat. He wore glasses. because at some point in his life, he had an accident, so one of his eyes was a glass eye. And oftentimes, the glass eye and the real eye wouldn't line up, so you didn't know which eye was what and who was looking at you. Perhaps the best teacher I have ever had, because it was in his class I read my first book cover to cover. Fire Next Time, James Baldwin. I began to read stuff like Antigone and understand Paul Laurence Dunbar and all of the short stories and poems. I began to immerse myself in a level of study that I didn't realize I had the capacity to do. And after that first semester, I did pretty good in this class. I had a B-. That was a struggle for me because my subjects and verbs always be fighting each other. They still fighting each other. I was proud of myself. Got a B- after Dr. Simmons, and in order to finish, you had to complete successfully Dr. Simmons' class, and that next semester, took a test, got it back, and this particular day was unique because in his class, it was so structured that when you crossed the threshold of his class, everyone went silent. And when you left his class, once you crossed that threshold, people began to talk again. You ever had a professor like that had that command of the classroom? And this particular day, we all get in the classroom. And we sit down, and Dr. Simmons was unusually late. He was visibly angry, and he passed out the test. And he looked around, and I looked at my D- on my test. And he snatched off his glasses. And he looked around the class. One eye was over here, and the other eye was over there. Afro still one picked over there. He says, some of you are resting on your laurels, but I can assure you it's not strong enough. That eye was looking at me. It was piercing through me because I had a B- coming out of the first semester, but I'm looking at a D- on this test. Sent shockwaves to me. I was touched. He said, class dismissed. We all began to walk out to class, and this day no one said a word as we crossed that threshold. Young lady who sat on the opposite side of the classroom, we ended up walking next to each other, and she was also upset. And she said, you know, Dr. Simmons didn't have to bust me out that way. See, as I thought one eye was looking at me, the other eye was looking at her. And truth be told, he was talking to all of us. In NAACP, we can't rest on our laurels. They're not strong enough. Yes, we were architects behind Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 and 1955. Yes, we have filed over 10,000 lawsuits to hold public education accountable. Yes, we have filed over 20,000 lawsuits to address issues around voting rights. Yes, we have marched in the streets to hold governments accountable. Yes, we have leveraged our votes to get people in office. Yes, we celebrated the election of President Obama. Yes, we've done all those things, but we cannot rest on our laurels. They're not strong enough. The reward for good work is more work. And we got work to do. There's no need to get into a public discourse with 45. But there's much responsibility that we bear to continue the work with our partners. The National Baptist Convention USA, the Pan-Hellenic Council. Wasn't that a beautiful thing to see Tom Battle to walk up here yesterday? And all of our organizations, we don't have time to be in competition with any other civil rights personalities or organizations. We don't have time to have internal branch fights. We don't have time for any of that because we cannot rest on our laurels. They're not strong enough. The next 5 years are the most crucial points in this democracy. NAACP, we must be the compass in the right direction. That can only happen if we're all walking lockstep together. So as I close, I'm going to ask you to do two things. Take out your cell phones. Yes, I was up here too long. Take out your cell phones. Open up your text. Type in the number 40649. I go on the Mark Thompson show every Tuesday, and I repeat this over and over. See it on the screen. Text the word NAACP to the number 40649. And as you do it, make sure you share this with every member of your branch, every member of your church, every member of your fraternity or sorority, every member of whatever organization you're a part of, because this is the new technology we need to communicate through to turn out the vote this year. This is the new technology that we need to utilize so that we can put a call into every U.S. senator to say, if you cut a deal on the Supreme Court nominee, you can expect we're going to cut a deal to get you out of office. Second thing, I want all of us to leave this hall today with the pledge that we're going to do all we can to make this association what it needs to be. And that pledge would include that as you have your branch elections this year, if you lose, take the loss and keep working. That pledge would include if you're called upon to give what you can, give it, and don't worry about the credit. That pledge includes making sure you serve as a mentor to some young people the same way Dr. Howard served as mentors to those men and women I mentioned. And I'm not talking about young people under the age of 25. I'm talking about all of our young people. We are aging fast, and we need to replenish now. We're the NAACP, and in many ways, we are all we got. But what we got is enough to defeat hate if we simply vote. Peace and power. Good? Thank you.
Folks, that was Derek Johnson, the president and CEO of the NAACP, giving his keynote speech to all of the delegates here who are gathered. Some 5,000 delegates are here. More than a couple of thousand other folks are here as well. Derek Johnson, of course, a longtime leader of the Mississippi State Conference of the NAACP, took over when the board chose not to renew the contract of Cornell Brooks, who was president and CEO. He was initially made the interim president of the NAACP, and then eventually the board chose to make him the actual permanent president and CEO. In his speech, he talked about, again, what the focus of the NAACP should be. And one of the things, if you heard towards the end, where he said they are about challenging that if any person who votes for Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court, the NAACP will ensure they don't get black votes. That is a challenge to folks like Joe Manchin in West Virginia. That's a challenge to folks like Doug Jones in Alabama. And so that is Derek Johnson, again, laying it out in terms of exactly where the NAACP stands when it comes to the appointment of Brett Kavanaugh. And so a lengthy speech. Again, as you heard him say, he said, look, it wasn't about rah-rah. He said, Chairman Leon Russell took some of his speech last night. But again, really, Derek Johnson laying out the agenda, the focus of the NAACP going towards the midterm elections this year, then, of course, presidential election in 2020. And so what's happening now is a number of folks are also leaving out because you've got the luncheons taking place. Deval Patrick, who is the former governor of Massachusetts, is going to be speaking at one of the noon luncheons. And so we're going to be carrying that live. Now, also what's happening is in one of the other luncheons, the youth luncheon, they're going to have one of their hip-hop forums. Tamika Mallory is going to be moderating that as well. And so we'll be actually talking to, we'll be shooting that, recording that, and then live streaming that later as well. And so we have lots of things happening. And then, of course, at 6 o'clock local time, we're going to also have the youth public forum that's happening there as well. Right now, though, we're going to talk with Karen Towns. She is the vice chair of the NAACP board of directors, and so we're going to welcome her right now to Roland Martin Unfiltered. And so she step on in. Karen, come on. There you go. All right, go ahead, take a seat there. So first and foremost, how you doing?
I am honored to be sitting here with you.
All right, glad to have you here. Now, for all the folks who don't know, how long have you been on the NAACP board?
I've been on the NAACP board 12 years and only 5 months as the vice chairman.
And so that's what you do on the volunteer side. Where are you on the work side for folks who don't know?
So my day job is as an executive at Pfizer, Inc., the world's premier biopharmaceutical company, where I've been for 22 years, and I'm Vice President of Corporate Affairs. Now,
Derek just finished giving his speech, and one of the things that he talked about, really laying out a vision, getting back to basics for the organization. And one of the things he talked about in terms of helping local chapters. But a lot of folks who don't realize, the reality is, we discussed this yesterday, the NAACP is made up of volunteers. If you take away the national office, the 2,200 chapters, they are volunteers all across the country.
Absolutely. I was a local branch president from Brooklyn, New York, where Eljoy Williams is currently our president. And the real work of the association takes place in local communities. And we are only as good as those presidents and their teams. And if it's not getting done there, we have a problem.
And so what are you and other board members, what are you trying to provide to Derek and provide to these branches to better do their work?
So, Roland, it's really about, one, providing Derek the support that he needs. He knows this association better than any CEO we've ever had because he has been in the trenches day to day making democracy work in Mississippi. What we as a board know we have to do is provide training. We need to make sure that branches are receiving their membership cards on time, because if people are out there recruiting members to be a part of this association and they're paying their hard-earned $30, they need to be able to get their cards. And once they have their cards, they need to have access to the information that will allow them to, take it to their state capitals on education, on health care, on criminal justice, and getting out there to register voters.
One of the other issues, it also deals with the issue in terms of irrelevance, and so people always bring that up. A poll was taken by Cornell Belcher's firm that showed that a majority of Gen Xers, Gen Yers, as well as millennials felt that groups like Black Lives Matter and Color of Change were doing far more than NAACP. And so how do you also deal with that? Because there are a lot of things that chapters are doing that folks simply don't know.
Well, Roland, you're one of our best advocates in talking about the work that we do. And ultimately, we have to do a better job. And you know what? What a lot of people don't know is that the folks that are in these local branches, they are volunteers, and they may not have the expertise in terms of communication. They may not even have a communications chairperson. And that is a liability for us because many times their message is not being heard in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But as our president said today, we can't be in competition with other groups. If anything, we need to be working together, and we have to be, making sure that we're sharing how other branches that may be doing a better job at getting their message out on social media and elsewhere, how they're doing it so others can learn from that.
You also, again, with Leon coming aboard as chairman, Derek coming on as president, and all the conversations I've been having with folks, there's this intense reexamination of everything internally that positions the organization for the future. And so, what does that entail? I mean, is it a top to bottom examination of everything in terms of what money is being spent, what is being directed, how you're utilizing staff, all of that?
And this is the exciting part, and this is why I signed up to be part of this team, because, this ain't your grandmother's NAACP. Times have changed, and we've got to be doing things differently. So something as simple as the processing of membership cards, which is a very manual process right now, that's crazy. And we have Derek.
It's manual?
It's pretty much manual.
Wow.
Now, let me just say that in all due respect, certainly Ben Jealous and Cornell Brooks, they too dealt with this problem, and they too wanted to go about making the changes. But Derek is saying there are no sacred cows. He is, having the tough conversations that need to be had to bring about the change that's necessary. And so whether it is that, whether it's reimagining how do we do a convention, we're happy that you're here as many days as you are with us, but it's expensive to run this convention the way it is. And maybe we can look at different ways of doing it. So it's from the top to the bottom, and staffing is an area where, we have to figure out where do we need to deploy our talent the most, and who are the people and what are the capabilities we now need for those leaders in the field to help our folks that are in the branches and the local units.
Well, one of the things that look, for me, as in terms on the media side, and I was telling folks the other day, that when you look at, of course, folks talk about the Image Awards, and so, of course, which is aired the last several years on TV One, but the NAACP also honors those folks who are on Broadway. They also the Axel competition, which I have said. Vernon Jarrett was a very good friend of mine, founder of Axel, is still one of the most underutilized assets of the NAACP. And so one of the things I said to them yesterday is like, hey, the award ceremony, get us that, and then we'll stream that out as well. Because again, what those things do, plus other things that happen, when people are constantly seeing it, that answers the question, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, I just think that change is constant. And it's really important that we understand that we can take learnings from people like you and others that are graciously giving us advice. But I want people to understand that the NAACP, for all the challenges we may have, we are only as good as the people who are part of us. Mm-hmm. And we need those with the talents, with the capabilities to join us. And we want you, we need you, and we were built for a time such as this. And as they've said these last couple of days, we can't agonize, we got to organize.
Right.
And we got to organize it together.
All right. Cam, we appreciate it.
Thanks you for having me.
See, that was painless. She thought it was going to be painful, y'all.
Listen, I know how you do.
I'll hurt you next time. The first time I give you a free ride.
Love you, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks a bunch. Again, folks, we're here, right here, Ken. I'll take the microphone because we're going to pull up another guest coming up. And so, again, folks, we're here at the 109th NAACP National Convention here in San Antonio. And so we have been, of course, talking with various folks. Wendell. Come on up. I need to holler at you for a second. We're streaming live. How you doing? Yep. Go right ahead. Grab the microphone here. Grab the microphone here. And so, we're going to do a two first. So let's do this here, Anthony. Anthony, do this here. Let's slide that chair right over here. And so I'm going to have you share the microphone with Dr. Anthony. So come on over here. And so take a seat right here. So we are, of course, live streaming all of this. And folks, many of you saw him on stage yesterday, open this thing up. Tell folks who you are, where you're from.
Michael Turner, National Board Member, Chair of the Convention Planning Committee, and I rise and hail from Detroit, Michigan.
Well, since we got two Detroit, now, see, first of all, y'all can tell, because most of us say Detroit. Detroit. He's like Detroit. Then, of course, we also have longtime head of the Detroit branch of the NAACP. You often saw him on TV Once, News One Now, Reverend Dr.
Thank you, Roland. Always good to be with you and my good friend and brother, Mike Turner, who just won re-election by acclamation. There was no competition, so that's a good sign that he must be doing a good job. Wendell Anthony, president of the Detroit branch of the Detroit branch, as you said, where the national convention is going to be in the city of Detroit next year. All roads, Roland, not one road, not two roads, not three roads, all roads lead to Detroit.
And y'all do notice I've never actually been invited. I've done a lot of Freedom Fund dinners all across the country.
Please.
I've never been invited to do the keynote at the Detroit. You know, they had me sit on the dais one year, you know, but I ain't never given a speech. I know they can handle that much funk from Houston.
That's because you're always busy, man. And we only have 10 to 12,000 people every year for the event.
But you invite me, you have 15.
Oh, Lord.
I'm just trying to tell you. Everywhere I go, I sell out Freedom Fund
well,
dinners.
consider yourself invited then,
I'm
brother.
just letting you know. You're going to set a record
Oh,
when I
Lord,
speak.
have mercy.
I'm just letting you know.
All roads rolling. I got you.
So I got to ask both of you. You heard Derek speak, and his whole deal was, look, I ain't here for rah-rah. Would you say that for him, the leadership is getting back to basics?
No question. I think we have in Derek Johnson someone we haven't had since Kwaizi, someone who knew the NAACP, someone who grew up in the NAACP. Cornell Brooks, good man. Ben Jealous, good man. But it took them a year or two to get to understand and know the NAACP. We're very complicated. We have youth, we have AXO, we have adult. And so I think that it was important that we get someone who knew the NAACP, because it can take you a couple of years to understand. You got to know what's broke before you can fix it. Derek Johnson knew what's already broke.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. One of the beautiful things about Derek is that Derek comes from the community of the NAACP. He was a Mississippi State Conference president. He knows from the grassroots level what it's like to be engaged in the trenches, and that's what we need. It is back to basics, some fundamental things that we do, and we've done well. The beauty also is that he can work from the suites to the streets and vice versa. And I say that not in a cavalier sense, but in the sense that he brings the managerial skill, the operational skill, the financial acumen to raise money, and is not lost a common touch. Roland, you know how critical this very time is that we're living in. You know the necessity that we must have in order not only to advocate in the streets, but to be able to negotiate in the suites and to deal with policy. I really like Derek because he understands policy. It's not about personality, it's about policy. And to the degree that we effectuate some political changes, some policy changes, Trump is dealing with policy. Yeah, we don't like him. He is the worst president we've had that I can remember. That's clear. But at the same time, he's appointing federal judges. At the same time, he's appointing somebody to the Supreme Court. He not only has two, he may get a third one. At the same time, he's embarrassing us across the world. He's in Helsinki, Finland right now, embarrassing us. And he's not performing the constitutional duties of the president. The number one responsibility of any president is to defend, protect the Constitution, and protect the nation. He's not doing that. He's not saying anything against the guy who's invaded and attacked our nation.
Well, actually, I watched the news conference, and he literally sided with Putin over U.S. intelligence over hacking. He literally said it.
And see, Roland, you and I know that, and he never would have done it, but if Barack Obama had engaged in any of that, he would be lynched. Not impeached, they would take him out. And I'm simply saying we cannot enable him. But in spite of all of that, the NAACP, the Urban League,
Man, STLC, churches, fraternities, sororities, labor, women, everybody has got to take their souls to the polls and vote to get this cat out. And we should not stop and quit. We got to stay and hold and keep moving.
Last question for you, and that is, when you talk about getting back to basics, when you talk about the upcoming midterm elections, what do you say? Let's say that's somebody you're on the street, and that person says, look, man, I don't want to hear that. I ain't interested in voting. It don't mean nothing to me. What do you tell that one person why they should be registered and vote?
Donald Trump. That's what I tell them. I say we got Donald Trump because our community feel that voting isn't important. Donald Trump should not be the president of the United States, but because we have such apathy, this is what we get, a Donald Trump who is embarrassing the United States of America all over the world, who is lifting up, endorsing hatred and bigotry. And that's what we will continue to get if we feel like voting isn't important. And I say, keep looking at the president of the United States. And if that's what you like, don't vote. That's not what I like.
What would you tell them?
After I tell them that, I also tell them this is personal. This is about you. It's about your children. It's about your very life. Black lives do matter. It's about you being able to be protected and guaranteed security from rogue police officers. It's about your health care. It's about your grandmama and your granddad. It's about your children. The Supreme Court is about your future. The Supreme Court is going to determine whether or not you are going to be able to vote, have equal opportunity, where your children are going to be determined whether or not they're going to have a solid future. It's about your wages. It's about where you live. It's about taking your butt back to the plantation rather than continue on in this nation as a free and a citizen that has dignity and respect. So this is personal. It ain't about whether or not our ancestors did. Yeah, I know. It used to be a time we can say you got to vote because our ancestors died. But that ain't enough, Roland. What is enough is that your life is on the line. If you can't get up for yourself, get up for your child. Get up for your mama and for your dad and for your grandmama. They need you to vote. When you don't vote, you don't have a voice in none of this. And if you want things to change, don't talk about it, be about it.
I think he pretty much answered that for us. Gentlemen, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us at Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you, Roland. You're invited to come to Detroit, man.
All right, I'll go. I got some Gators. I got some Gators.
All right, that's a prerequisite. You know that.
I will do. All right, I appreciate it, Doc. Again, folks, we're here at 109th NAACP convention. Glad to chat with a couple of brothers there. And so Reverend Dr. Anthony just pretty much gave us our PSA when it comes to voting. And so a lot of things happening right now. So let me check the clock right now. So it is noon. My good buddy, my fraternity brother, is on his way, and that is Reverend Dr. William Barber. And so he is making his way over to the stage. And what I might do is we might do something. Okay, let's do something a little different here. So let me figure out. So let's see where Dr. Barber is. Like I say, I know he's making his way over, and so he has to come up those stairs. And so why don't we do this here? I know I'm about to straight improvise, so let's do this here just to make it easier on Dr. Barber. Do we want to, what do we want to do? Do we want to point the camera down to the floor and to put one of the lights on the floor, and I'll go down on the floor to interview him to make it? No. Only reason I'm saying because, again, because of his health, trying to get him make it up those stairs, that might be a problem. So can we do that? I just want to see what just make it easy on him. And so, of course, Reverend Dr. Barber, who stepped down as the state conference chair of the NAACP, he is still a national board member, but right now, of course, he is very much involved in the Poor People's Campaign. He is here, got here this morning. We were texting over the weekend, and so he is going to be, I know, attending some of the meetings here as well. But again, he has been very much involved picking up the mantle of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Poor People's Campaign, a huge issue. They have been mobilizing and organizing people all across the country, when it comes to fighting on behalf of the poor. And you may have noticed, what has been going on has been the Trump administration has pretty much said that the war on poverty is over. They literally actually believe that. That's how crazy this administration is. Reverend Dr. Barber has made it perfectly clear that is truly nonsensical to suggest that the war on poverty is over. And so again, so they texted me and they said he's making his way over. And so I know he was seated across the room over there. I was talking to him. And so I'm just looking to see where he is in the room. And so that's what's going on right now. And so there's a criminal justice panel that's going to be taking place in this room right here that we're waiting on. And so we're going to interview him, and then we're going to break this down and then make our way over to hear Deval Patrick. In the short term, let's do this here. Let's just go ahead. Let's take the stage. Curtis Blow is about to speak to the NAACP. So when Dr. Barber making his way over, we'll go to the stage and hear Curtis Blow address the NAACP.
How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, if you feel good, say, oh yeah. If you really feel good, say ho. Now for the NAACP, everybody in the house, 109 years, everybody scream.
Let's give it up for Curtis Blow. The hip-hop industry has become one of the strongest economic forces on the planet. It was born out of the black community, with Jay-Z, Puff Daddy, Dr. Dre, and 50 Cent inking billion-dollar deals with major corporations. Hip-hop artists have demonstrated their incredible economic power. This economic power is being transformed into social change with groundbreaking projects like the Khalif Browder story and the Free Meek Mills campaign. People are talking about a new era of hip-hop activism. When the stakes are high, when our future is at risk, artists are becoming movement leaders using their words and resources to make changes in prosecution, bail reform, and mass incarceration. At this year's convention, we are holding a hip-hop social justice summit, 2 days of events, to discuss how we can work with hip-hop community to transform our nation. We start this summit with a conversation led by the unstoppable, courageous freedom fighter, Tamika Mallory. Tamika is an esteemed social justice leader, advocate, activist, and mother. Tamika's focus on civil rights issues includes extensive work around equal rights for women, economic empowerment, going against gun violence, criminal justice reform, and police accountability. Tamika is one of the 4 chairs for the Women's March on Washington, the largest single-day protest in U.S. history. Tamika is now continuing the mission of the Women's March on Washington as the co-president of the Women's March Incorporated. Tamika has made the fight for equity her life's work, and she continues to work as a board member of the Gathering for Justice organization, an active leader of the Justice League of New York City. Everyone, please give a round of applause for my friend and yours, Ms. Tamika Mallory.
Hello, hello. NAACP, what's up, y'all? I hear my Dukes out there. Hey, my Dukes. You know I love you. Thank you all so much, and I'm so grateful to my friend Scott Esdell. Let's give him a round of applause for the work that Scott is doing. I feel like you guys can't see me over here behind this podium, so I'm going to step out here a little bit. Scott is just really an amazing leader. You know, when Scott first was tapped to take on the criminal justice work for NAACP National, he contacted me. And, you know, usually when we're given more responsibility, we kind of feel like, wow, another job, you know. And instead, Scott was so excited. He was so excited and so ready to take this responsibility on, because as someone who travels across this country, really looking at the conditions of young people and people in general with our criminal justice system, he has so many ideas, and we are actually seeing them come to life within his work at the NAACP and with a panel like what we are going to discuss today. So let's give him another round of applause. Thank you so much, Scott, for